Hello, this is Maggie. You're watching Pretty Guardian Gaming, and today I am very excited to be talking to you about New World Aeternum. So, this is a game I have been playing since before it launched. I was literally part of the beta test for it. When they were initially working on this game, Amazon Game Studios made it seem like it was going to be this sort of PvP survival crafting kind of game. And then towards the very end of the development cycle, they made a hard pivot saying, no, this is going to be more of an MMORPG. And with that, they added in more crafting skills like fishing and also a story to the game and made it more like quest-based storyline. Something that is a little more traditional to the MMORPG experience. And my first thought back then was, there is no way that they're going to pull this off. The game is going to feel empty and boring. And to be honest, it kind of was. However, I was surprised by the amount of effort that had been put in to hitting that MMORPG goal. There were a lot of really great expeditions. The sound design in this game is amazing. Tell me it is not the most satisfying thing in the world to hear the crack of your pickaxe against a stone or the timber splintering when you chop down a tree. However, it was also a buggy mess. There was a lot of weird stuff where people could code into the chat boxes in the game and make crazy pictures pop up or kind of glitch out the game for you. There were a lot of issues with the game economy to the point where they actually had to shut down the trading post for several periods of time. And that was really painful in this game because it's not like you can just go up to an NPC and sell your stuff. You either have to break it down or actually engage with their trading system. The storyline was also incomplete at launch. It wasn't until their Heart of Madness DLC where they really brought the base game to a place that I thought was playable and decent and where it should have been, and that was at least 6 months after launch. So this game was underbaked straight out the gate. But they've been updating it pretty consistently and have turned it into something that is kind of amazing. They went back and revamped the starting zones, giving them more of an identity and unique storyline. And then when they added in the Rise of the Angry Earth DLC, I thought that was kind of a silly name, but overall I loved the Elysian Wilds. It was this beautiful Feywild sort of place. They added in mounts so you could now race around, and it wasn't just oh yeah, here's your horse or whatever, like in Elder Scrolls Online. There was actually a skill line and a quest line for them and cosmetics and stuff. The mount system in this game is super fun. They also added the weapon, the flail, and along the way with all of this, they pivoted to a seasonal content release format where each season they would bring in new quests, new storylines, new trials, and things for you to do. And overall, I did not really like that aspect. I thought that it was a really kitschy way for them to sneak in a battle pass, which in a buy-to-play game, I'm not really excited about. I think that they would have been better off just doing a subscription model, kind of like you get with Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy XIV, especially because they kept saying oh yeah, this would be the release date for this season, and they really couldn't stick to the seasonal schedule. This has been a development team that has overpromised and underdelivered during the entire lifetime of the game. And now, in October, they released their Season 10 update, Night Haven. And this one looks like the love child of Castlevania and Van Helsing. It is giving gothic horror realness. You have these really rich autumnal orange trees, this amazing gothic architecture, these gigantic castles that you can explore. There's lots of new quests. And then they also released this system called Catacombs. And these are more procedurally generated dungeons. They're very straightforward, but they incorporate bosses from different areas of the game, and you can use them to gather resources that can be traded for weapons and gear. There are going to be some maybe mild spoilers here, so please watch yourself. If the story is really important to you, just go play the game and enjoy it and don't listen to what I have to say. But for everybody else, let's talk about it a little further. So this story picks up where Rise of the Angry Earth left off with Morgaine. And this is something that I actually like about this game, is how they kind of incorporate historical figures and mythological figures into the lore of the game. So Morgaine from Arthurian legend took this sacred object called the Tear of Gaia that has just immense natural power to the island of Aeternum. and she ran away with it to Nighthaven, where it eventually fell into the hands of this vampire lord, Alexei, and you have to go and get it back from him. First thoughts with this zone is that it's absolutely beautiful, and I think it's so cool that they created this like really inspired area for us to play in. The fact that it was a free update was also really cool. They made Rise of the Angry Earth free, and then this new update free as well. So lots of content for people to play through. And you know, in this economy, I love a good deal, so you really can't beat the price of free 99. So that being said, please take the following feedback with a grain of salt. It was a free update. However, I do not think that it was a good update. And so some examples, if you're actually listening to the voice acting in the new zone compared to the rest of the game is terrible. I almost wonder if they were looking at their data and going, oh yeah, people just kind of click through the dialogue anyway, so we don't really need to invest money into this. However, for the people that do listen to the dialogue, it kind of sort of matters. So I think that they could have done at least a slightly better job than they did. The other thing is that the quest line is extremely short and mostly incomplete. If I were to give them the benefit of the doubt, I would say that they were probably planning on releasing more of it in future updates. However, let's circle back to that point in just a moment. I think that the quests were mostly uninspired. With the seasonal quest line, they incorporated a lot of things like puzzles that you could do. The content just felt a little more varied and interesting. However, with this one, you didn't really get that. Like everything was very straightforward as far as like you go here and you kill this. But man, that fight against Alexei fucking sucked. I don't know if the developers actually played through this because it was just so painful. There were several different sections of the fight where I didn't really know what to do or where to be. I don't think that they telegraphed things well. Something that this game does as one of their game design pillars, and I say this because the devs have actually talked about it before, is there are a lot of points in the game where they're just trying to drag out your playtime. So for example, if you go to open a door, they'll make opening the door take 5 seconds for you to do when it could just be a click and then you're through it. Or maybe that spot didn't need a door at all for you to get through. And it felt like the way that they layered out the stages of this fight, it didn't get more fun, it didn't get more interesting. It felt like what they were doing was trying to stretch this fight out into being something more impactful than it actually was. Some of the good design aspects of this update is that they introduced a lot of verticality to the zones. There's a lot of like scaling up the mountains, going higher and higher into these beautiful castles. And the developers even commented that they wanted players to start looking up in the game more. So they incorporated things that you would have to look up for, such as these like traps that fall from the ceiling. So you kind of have to pay attention to your environment a little more. There are definitely some good aspects here. However, the other big thing with this zone, circling back to the catacombs, I don't think that these were implemented well. It was a good idea, but they did not hit it out of the park. My first catacomb that I ran, we had 3 people in our party. One of them dropped out, so we couldn't really finish the catacomb. We just did a couple boss fights and then we evacuated out of there as quickly as we could. Catacombs are timed anyway. You only get 30 minutes to complete the stage. They're meant to be like these quick fights. You get your rewards, you get out. So I guess it still kind of sort of worked out, but it felt bad not being able to do all of the bosses through that one. So whatever, that was just luck of the draw. That happens in any MMO. You get players that are like that. In the second one that I did, we had a bug in the first room where you could not progress past that room. So as a group, we were all like, okay, well, let's just drop out because clearly we're not going to get anywhere with this one. I go to join the next catacomb and it tells me that I'm on a cooldown timer because I've been naughty and I left an active catacomb. It kind of felt like I was being punished for their poor game design. And that's not even getting into how terrible the RNG is on upscaling your endgame gear and getting the right perks or whatever that you need for it. It does not feel good at all. It kind of feels like they were trying to be like Diablo, where they just throw gear at you, but they didn't really hit the mark for what players would actually want to incorporate into their build. And that brings us to the final layer in this shit cake that I've been describing to you all, and that is the fact that Amazon has been doing some massive layoffs. Now look, I am always against layoffs in the game industry. I think that they are used by these evil corporate overlords as a way to artificially tinker with their bottom line, and it just completely disregards the end consumer product, and it treats people as if they are disposable. We are not even cogs in the machine. We are the grease in the machine to them, something that they can grind up and spit out, and we do not matter. So a lot of my criticism is not necessarily at the devs themselves. I feel like a lot of passion did go into this game. It is directed at Amazon as a company, at Jeff Bezos and these other tech billionaires that are constantly stomping on us. Amazon Game Studios did have layoffs that have directly impacted the development of this game. In their most recent update that came out today, October 28th, they have said that they do not know that they'll be releasing new events. They don't think that they'll be releasing new content. What we have right now is probably all that we're ever going to get. They say that the game will run at least for the next 6 months into 2026. However, they could be sunsetting the game. We don't know what the future will hold. At this point, I would bet dollars to donuts that this is the signal that New World Aeternum is approaching the end. Anyways, that's all the news that I have for you. I love this game. I put in over 800 hours into it. I'll probably play it off and on up until they do finally decide to sunset it. If you enjoy the game or you have any updates on what's going on with Amazon, feel free to jump in the comment section below. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and help me continue to grow my channel. Thank you again for watching along today, and I will catch you in the next one.